And now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's keynote presenter, Dr. Eric Topol. Dr. Topol is director of the Scripps Translational Science Institute, chief academic officer of Scripps Health, and author of The Creative Destruction of Medicine: How the Digital Revolution Will Create Better Healthcare. He's a practicing cardiologist with Scripps Clinic and a pioneer in the field of cardiovascular medicine. Dr. Topol was voted as the #1 most influential physician executive and is one of the top 10 most cited researchers in medicine. As you'll hear from Dr. Topol, digital devices like mobile sensors and advanced processors are enhancing doctors' understanding of their patients, leading to more personalized and effective ways to maintain health, detect problems, and treat illness. In our increasingly connected world, where about 6 billion people have access to mobile phones, individualized healthcare data has now the potential to be collected and distributed nearly instantly. This digital revolution in medicine could lead to improved care for the people of all ages in every area of the world who suffer from virtually any disease, from diabetes to Alzheimer's to breast cancer. And with that, it is my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Eric Topol.
Thanks so much, Brian. It's wonderful to be here with you this evening, and for me, the first time to ever have interactions with SIA. It's a fantastic organization. I've learned a lot about you all this evening. It's been really eye-opening for me. And now I want to get right into the topic at hand. First, before I do that, I need to get a digital title of this group. So, particularly timely today, how many of you are active on Twitter here? Okay, I say less than 10%. That's not a good thing. You need to get on Twitter. And I don't have any shares of Twitter. I wish I did. So the reason I say that is that we all share information, particularly in the medical domain, which is the biggest growth opportunity in semiconductors ever in the world, and the noble mission. I hope I'll convince you that this evening. You need to get on Twitter. Okay. So Brian already mentioned this, the mobile phone, cell phone 1973, 40-year anniversary. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And it came back up in this week's New Yorker cover. Here it is, President Obama with the 40-year-old cell phone, Kathleen Sebelius, and the floppy disk. So I want to submit to you, healthcare and medicine needs rebooting. Okay. Now, these little devices changed our world in a span of 8 years, from the iPod through BlackBerry and the prototypic smartphone, e-readers and tablets. Just over 8 years, it changed our daily existence profoundly. Just think when these are wireless medical devices. And it changed it so much that we are now completely transfixed and attached, surgically connected to our screens. And they have a new species of man, and it's known as Homo distractus. I'm looking around the room, and you're not on your devices. And okay, well, I asked the Twitterverse. I said, okay, the attention span has reduced from 1998. It was 12 minutes, and in 2008 it was 5 minutes. I said, what is it now? And within seconds, I got an Irish physician had the answer, and it was, sorry, what was the question? So, this problem of connected to devices starts at a very young age, as you see here. I thought that was young. And then I came across this. I said, well, that's really pretty young. And then even younger here, yeah. So it's changing our world, and most of us in this room are digital immigrants, but the digital natives, particularly in medicine, understand where this is headed. So, you know this, more information generated in the past couple of years than the history of man. And these books, of course, dealing with this big data issue, which is an enormity, a challenge to extract the useful information. So I had to get clearance, I did, from John Kelly to tell you about this analogy about big data is like teenage sex. This is from Dan Ariely from Duke recently, and I think it's quite an interesting analogy. Everyone talks about it. Nobody really knows how to do it. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it. so everyone claims they are doing it. That's probably the best definition of big data I've ever seen. Okay. So what we have today is old medicine. It's old and it needs to change. And basically you created this incredible digital infrastructure of mobile devices and pervasive connectivity, the internet, social networking, and this computing power of cloud and supercomputing, which is just extraordinary. And on the other side, we'll get into some of this tonight, the wireless sensors, the genomics, the imaging, the health information systems. This sets up the biggest convergence, the superconvergence as I would call it, and really enables this creative destruction to take place for a new medicine, finally, inevitably, to take hold. And that is what is going to happen in the future. It's just a matter of when. So today we practice medicine at a population level, which is incredibly wasteful. And so, for example, there's a raging debate, what should be the sodium intake for all people in this country? That is crazy. Some people are remarkably salt sensitive and others are salt resistant. Now, how much salt they would take, it wouldn't change their blood pressure. Why should we have one level for all people? That's population medicine mentality. And for example, screening, prostate cancer, breast cancer, these do net harm for men and women. Net harm, not good, because of all the false positives that are engendered. And then you have Stephen Jay Gould, who was told he had 8 months to live from a mesothelioma, lung cancer, and he lived 20 years. So there's no average patient. And this book that just came out, Average is Over, has nothing to do with medicine, but it actually has everything to do with medicine. That is, average is over, and now we can move from a population medicine level to an individual level. We couldn't do that before, but now we have the tools. And that's what's so exciting, because we have a geographic information system of every aspect of what makes a human being tick. And that goes from a social graph to biosensors, to imaging, and then all the omics, the panoramomics of the DNA sequence, the transcriptome, the proteome, metabolome, microbiome, epigenome, and then the exposome, the environment. All of these things that we can quantify, we can digitize today. That's what makes this such an extraordinary, unique time in medicine. So let me just start off with the social graph, because as it turns out, as Stephen Wolfram has shown, you can get an enormity of information just from one's Facebook registration. And that's a kind of scary thing. And of course, on the other hand, when you pool data like photos, videos, and emotions, and pictures, thoughts, you can have an Arab Spring. And this is the Egypt portion of that, this book by Wael Ghonim, and the key message is right on the cover. The power of the people now, because of this digital infrastructure, is greater than the people in power. And that will likely be what drives the future of medicine. We'll come back to that. So it turns out you can't block this tracking, whether you do a Google search, of course, or you buy something on the internet. All these things don't work, of course. And we leave these digital breadcrumbs through our phones. So for example, being able to diagnose in a woman that she's pregnant and she doesn't know it, or that somebody has the flu through their mobile phone digital breadcrumbs. So now, this brings up this other problem. Perhaps you may have seen this. Dad says, you're monitoring all our phone calls. And President Obama says, he's not your dad. So, right. By the way, you got to get on Twitter, because that's where you get all this stuff, okay? Okay. So now let's get into sensors. Sensors are really hot right now, and it started out all these wearable sensors. Does anybody use Google Glass here? One person? Well, that's interesting, because around these parts, I understand they're called glass holes. But and I didn't make that up. Okay. So now, what's interesting about this is you got all these Band-Aids and Google Glass watches, all these wearable sensors. Start out with the fitness area. How many have a Fuel Band or Fitbit here? One of these? Oh, that's impressive. Okay. Well, so that helps get people. I have my patients, I recommend them, because trying to get 10,000 steps, as many of you have learned, is not so easy. So that's a start. That's how this whole thing got its legs, if you will. Then there's all these sleep tracking, which are not particularly accurate, but now people are starting to track quantitative metrics of their sleep. And finally, we're getting into medicine. So you can get a blood pressure cuff that connects to your smartphone and get hundreds of readings just by pressing start, or a glucometer directly to your phone. And that's, of course, a step in the right direction. But you can even do now a cardiogram through your phone. And that's so simple, it's actually kind of amazing. I'll show you that. It's just to do, it takes a second to do. And why would you do a regular cardiogram when you can just go through your phone? And so this is an app. You put your fingers, sensors on the back of that. And in just a second, those of you who can't be on the front of the room, you won't be able to see it, but you'll see a really good looking cardiogram, right, like that, you see? And you can do that, and it even led to all sorts of things, like being able to diagnose a heart attack at 30,000 feet. And also now I get emails from patients, and the subject line says, I have atrial fibrillation, now what do I do? Because there's an algorithm that reads the they don't even need a cardiologist. Okay. Or you can do a sleep study and just attach this device, reusable device, to the base of the phone, and you can get your oxygen saturation throughout the night and get your heart rate, and basically you don't have to go to the hospital, pay thousands of dollars, and who could sleep normally in a hospital sleep lab? And have to pay for that. Sensors that are like the lens for your eye, contact lenses, measures your eye pressure for glaucoma, already approved in Europe, and of course that data going to your phone. Or blow into the microphone of the smartphone and you get your forced expiratory volume, which is for an asthmatic predictive of an asthma attack long before there would be any wheezing. Or a necklace that gets cardiac output and stroke volume for every beat of the heart. Or for a newborn or a neonate, you can get a sock that gets vital signs now. There's all sorts of incredible sensors. So now let's go to the watches, because that's a hot area right now. And you can see I'm wearing a watch. And this one, by the way, is a watch band that can pick up a seizure before it happens in someone who has epilepsy. But this is not exactly a fashion statement, but it is basically tracking everything. If I go down, you'll know exactly why. It has my EKG, my blood pressure, beat to beat, my oxygen saturation, respirations, temperature, everything right here. And then it goes to your phone. So just think, you'll have your email, like you do, search the web, and then you can look at all your vital signs continuously. And if that doesn't engender hypochondria, I don't know what would. There's even now an idea of being able to count every calorie you take through, I'm not sure if this is going to work, through optical spectroscopy, but these guys, these students up at University of Waterloo in Canada are working on that. We'll see. But all these things need to be validated. We just published an article about that because we need real-world clinical trial evidence. So there's so much innovation in this space. It's everything you could think of, every physiologic metric there's a biosensor for, but they do need to be validated. You can even digitize pills and know exactly the moment when it hits the stomach of the person and detect adherence. And you can even, when a patient comes in with all these pills, they don't know what they are, you take a picture and you'll have an app that tells you everything about those pills, which is pretty darn remarkable. And you can start to digitize the brain now, which is also pretty striking because you have these things that have 15 brain wave sensors like this one here. And you can start to read minds, as was just shown a week ago in this Nature feature article. And what's interesting is you can now start to turn lights on and off by thinking about it, or move someone's arm remotely through the internet, through these kinds of sensors, which is pretty interesting. And these sensors are also evolving. So John Rogers at the University of Illinois Urbana has these digital skin tattoos, which stretch with skin and also stay on for up to 2 weeks without even any adhesive and have wireless components in them, and can get every muscle activity, electrocardiogram, or brain waves. Now, I'm not sure if I want to walk around with a skin tattoo like that, but imagine the kind of information that can be generated. And there's even now self-dissolving skin tattoos like this that have recently been published on. And you can convert the smartphone through microfluidics to a lab on a chip. So you can measure thyroid function test, liver function test, kidney function test, all sorts of things through a smartphone. And this is just incredible. You can even change a smartphone into a high-power microscope. So we want to move from lab on a chip to the work we're doing at Scripps is to the lab in the body. That's the next big wave after these wearable sensors. And so I thought you might get, this cartoon might intro this for you. And say, well, that's kind of silly. That can't be. So what I want to suggest is we have over 400 embedded sensors in our cars. We have over 10 sensors embedded in our smartphones. How many sensors do we have in the human body? 0. That's going to change. So if you want to know if someone's having a heart attack, if they're going to have a heart attack, we don't have any way to do that yet, but we will. And these gentlemen who died of massive heart attacks, who had workups, stress tests that were normal weeks before their heart attack, it's because the stress test only picks up tight narrowings. And the heart attack occurs in the crack of an artery because it's a mild narrowing. We can't predict that. But now we have a way into it because the cells that get sloughed off from the inside of the artery lining, they show up in the blood, and we've picked them up in hundreds of heart attack people in the early minutes, and we've genomically assessed these, sequenced these cells. And so we have a genomic signal. And we can couple that with a nanosensor. And this is from Caltech, Axel Scherer and his NanoFab group. And then in the blood, we haven't done it yet in patients, we're only now in animal testing, but then you could have your blood under constant surveillance, know days or a couple of weeks before the heart attack, and you would get a special heart attack ringtone. Hopefully it wouldn't induce a heart attack. Now, I showed, do a lot of you watch the Colbert Report here? Yeah? Okay, I showed this to Colbert when I had a chance to visit him.
We're setting up a little sensor that we can put in your bloodstream that will sense if you're going to have a heart attack days or a couple weeks before and give you a heart attack ringtone on your phone to warn you, prevent the heart attack.
Really?
Yes.
Now, now this information, I'm sure that it's going to come down the line that you know, the insurance companies will say, hey, listen, we'll give you a cut if you have a monitor on you, so we can stay healthier. But then they're going to sell that information about your present health to other people, and I'm going to get like a ringtone that says, would you like 20% off on caskets? You know, like, or Crestor or something like that.
Only he can come up with this. We're going to come back to him in a second. He's totally crazy. But you can do the same thing when you have the blood under surveillance. You could do the same thing for autoimmune attacks before they happen, like diabetes, the pancreas. Or you can even monitor cancer through plasma tumor DNA in someone who's being treated or perhaps at very high risk. And now let's get into imaging, because imaging is really exciting through the smartphone. And I want to say you can do most of the physical exam now through a smartphone. And so there's an attachment here you can just pop on, and it makes the best otoscope that you'd ever seen. And so let's go back. Colbert had an eardrum perforation.
Eardrum.
Yeah, I was diving and blew out my good eardrum over here.
I thought I could just take a look with the smartphone into your eardrum. Is that all right?
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll just bend over. No,
No,
really?
stay right
Okay,
there. Stay
all right.
there. So basically, I put this right in here.
Yeah.
And I hope I don't hurt you at all.
No, I hope so too. Ow?
That hurt?
No.
And I've got your eardrum right there.
It's an eardrum. It's not my ass. God. By the way, could I get a colonoscopy with this thing?
Yeah. Okay. So now I want to get to my favorite creative destruction with the stethoscope. And I had a wonderful discussion with many of the CEOs, and particularly I wanted to hug Mike Splinter earlier, because he gets this. And he says, why do these doctors walk around with these rubber tubes? They don't record anything. I said, oh my gosh, you get this. It's been around for 200 years, and it's dead. It's a relic. Most people haven't figured it out because it's still the icon of medicine. You can have a high-resolution ultrasound that fits in the pocket better than a stethoscope. And a stethoscope, as we know it today, doesn't look into scope anything. It's a stethophone. Okay. So I can look at someone's heart, and in seconds, with a ultrasound device, I see every aspect of their heart. their size of their chambers, the valves, how strong the heart muscle is, if there's any fluid in the sac around the heart, in seconds. And we validated against the $350,000 hospital ultrasound machine. And here's a patient of mine with a sick heart. And you can see, you can pick up the differences there about how the heart isn't contracting. You can do color flow of the blood, all sorts of things in seconds as part of the physical exam. So we have 125 million ultrasounds being done in this country at the tune of over $100 billion. And most of these could be done during the physical exam if we just used a real stethoscope. Okay. And this is, of course, a segue into sequencing, because Gordon Moore was one of the very first people who had sequenced. And he had sequencing through a chip. So it was this chip right here, which now, just a couple years later, has 600,000 more well density. And what's impressive about sequencing is that we have a timeline of all the different things that sequencing could change. I'm not going to have time to go through all of them. I want to just touch on a few high points about how sequencing, likely to be only through chips over the years ahead, will have a dramatic effect in every aspect of medicine and make it highly individualized. So one of the first things is we don't need to do an amniocentesis anymore for a woman who's pregnant, because we can look at the plasma of the mother to has the fetal DNA in it, and we can find out all sorts of things. We can do a whole genome sequence of the fetus at 8 to 10 weeks of pregnancy. There are 4 companies that are already into this, and this is my daughter's scan of our first grandchild that we're expecting. No trisomies, no 18, 13, 21 trisomy, and this is incredible to get this back at this early point in pregnancy without any invasive procedure, and this is incredibly accurate as well, 99.9% accuracy. So that's the prenatal disruption. That's just one example. I want to show you another one, which is undiagnosed diseases. You know, there's more than 1 million people who have a serious undiagnosed condition, some of them life-threatening, and they're walking around with that. And we call this in medicine idiopathic. Why do we use that term? Why don't we just say we don't know? You know, it comes from the Latin idios and pathic. I saw a new thing on Twitter, a new definition of idiopathic. Idiopathic only means that the patient is pathological and the doctor is an idiot. So I want to tell you about the first family at Scripps that we worked up as part of our research protocol. We've now done a bunch of these, but this is Lily Grossman and her parent, Stephen Gay. She had a terrible neurologic condition, although cognitively fully intact, but she had for 16 years gone to all these hospitals, $1.5 million of repetitive workups, and no diagnosis. And there's a lot of people like this, and they're not just only kids either. So she came to us. We did a sequence of Lily and her parents, 3 people. It probably cost us, for everything, all told, less than $20,000. And we made the diagnosis. I won't take you through all the bioinformatics. There's a lot here, finding the needle in the haystack. We made the molecular diagnosis. We changed her life. It was written up in National Geographic. She's a whole lot better. She's not normal. We're still working on that, but we now know what is the root cause of her illness, and we know what we have to do to treat it, which is great. The other thing I want to just touch on is cancer. Cancer is going to go through the biggest transformation of how we approach someone with cancer in history. And the reason for that is we've been stuck in the 1960s. This is a Consumer Medical Reports cover. And the main statement to me that resonates is cancer screening is stuck in a 1960s view of the disease. I'd submit to you everything in medicine almost is stuck in 1960s view, and your technology is going to be what changes it. And so you have now the ability to digitize a tumor. And when I say that, this is work that's very recent and very exciting, because you can get every layer about the tumor, the proteins, the mutations, every aspect, the epigenome, and this will then lead to the pathways that are responsible for that individual's tumor. And there are no 2 people's tumors that are the same. And so this is a revolution in being able to target precise treatment, hopefully with very durable results. Now, lastly, I just want to touch on the things that are going to go away, like the hospital. Why do we need hospitals? We can remotely monitor people continuously, very inexpensively, and safely. Hospital is known by George Orwell in 1946 as the antechamber to the tomb. Yeah, still today, 1 in 4 people are hurt being in the hospital. 1 in 4 people seriously hurt, mostly with infections or medication errors. So, we'll come back to clinics in a second. So this is a very futuristic design of the hospital room of the future, and it has all the vital signs on the wall and big plasma screens. My design for the hospital room of the future is that there is no hospital room, and we don't need that. And in agreement with me is the outgoing CEO of Kaiser Permanente, George Halverson, who says we need bedless hospitals. We need to move further and further away from the hospital setting and the doctor's office. And then about the clinic. Why do we go to the clinic? The average time with the doctor is 7 minutes, and we wait 60 minutes. 60 minutes to see the doctor who's typing on a keyboard, won't even look at us. That doesn't work. Well, we have studies now to show that you can save a lot of money with a virtual visit compared with a physical visit. And what's interesting is 70% in a Cisco Health of thousands of consumers said they much prefer a virtual visit than a physical visit. And we have the virtual doctor's office visit to be the norm in the future projected, at least this recent article from just last week. So the idea going down to your doctor's office is going to feel as foreign as going to the video store. Like Blockbuster, you remember that place? Yeah. That's what it's going to be like, folks. So this is a smartphone as you know it today. You use it like a pluripotent stem cell for everything. But in the future, this is the smartphone for medicine. It has to connect to the biosensors, it does the scanning, it connects to the remote monitoring, it tracks medication adherence, it can monitor the environment. It does a lot, not all, of the office visits through the phone. It's the lab on a chip, and it's a gateway to Watson supercomputers, cloud computing, everything. That's the smartphone, the hub of medicine in the future. This is the next medical revolution. And it's exciting because the smartphone will see you now. The most radical change in the history of medicine we're looking at here. Yeah, I did actually say that, and it's true. So I want to just close with the fact that we're late here in medicine and healthcare. We're so far behind every other aspect because we're so sclerotic and ossified. But you know, we got something really big going on right now because Moore's Law, that's you, an incredible, as you said, the most productive industry in humankind. But in the recent decade, that's actually been transcended by the drop in cost of sequencing, and that's continued to plummet. But what we have is an economic crisis in healthcare, because that's going in the opposite direction. So what I want to leave you with the point is that we haven't even begun to leverage transistors, Moore's Law, or sequencing. And that's what's so exciting, because that's going to happen, and that's going to change medicine forever. And I really want to thank you for your attention. Thanks for having me.